With the rise of technology, most designers and architects are ditching their pencil for the mouse. And many universities are also switching from teaching hand sketching skills to learning these drafting and modeling technologies just to keep up. And if you asked any professional designer or architect when the last time they hand sketched for a project, they probably wouldn't even remember. Today, we're sitting down with Brad Blythe, a seasoned architectural designer, design director, and one of the best hand sketchers I've ever met in my life, to answer this question: is hand sketching still important in 2023? Stay tuned. Hello and welcome. My name is KLSY and I'm the founder and creative director of KLSY, a full-service interior design firm specializing in commercial spaces for small and boutique-style businesses. Welcome to our design video series where we educate designers and clients about all things commercial interior design. If you're new to our channel, welcome. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, follow us on Instagram, and check out our website at www.klsy.design to sign up for our email newsletter. Today, we're sitting down with my very good friend, Brad, to discuss hand sketching. We're going to be talking about, is it still important in 2023 as a professional, and also give you some tips on how to improve your sketching skills if you're interested in doing so. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thanks for coming and taking the time. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
We hang out enough, but I wanted to hang out with you outside of professional things, which I guess this is professional. So, Brad, what qualifies you to talk about this topic?
Well, I started out at a time in the industry when computers hadn't come along yet. We were still trained to do everything by hand. We still sketched by hand. We still rendered by hand. So it was a part of the toolkit that you had to have to be an architect at that time.
I can't even imagine having to do everything by hand. And you guys had to fax over things and mail drawings.
Oh, yes.
Sound like a Gen Zer right now.
Yes.
What's a fax machine?
You've never had to experience a blueprint machine then?
Never heard of it.
Oh, they're a smelly treat. But coming from a generation like that, where you had to sketch all the time, it just became second nature to always use that in your daily work process. I think the dynamic of sketching has changed now. Since computers have come along, the purpose that we sketch has probably changed. We're not using it so much now as a presentation tool, but it's still, I think, very important when you're conceptualizing design to be able to just jot something down, spill it out on a piece of trace paper before you move to the computer to really do that 3D rendering. Mm-hmm. So I think it's still relevant, but it's relevant in a different way from when I started out.
Mm-hmm. Before it was you needed it to draft the documents, and now it's seen as more of a conceptual and even artistic medium.
I think so. And I think people still relate to it that way when they see it. They see a creative process when they look at it. They're not necessarily looking at it saying, is this the rendering of my project? Because they're expecting to see a photorealistic 3D rendering. But when they look at it, they start to see your concept and your creativity in the design itself before they get to that final image.
In terms of, we're in 2023, what is the way that you use sketching, I guess, along those lines, specifically in your day-to-day professional life? Or how do you see sketching useful specifically?
It's difficult because I think a lot of people still, even with computers, aren't necessarily just intuitive about envisioning a space in 3 dimensions. We can see something in a plan, or we can start to see it in 2 dimension, but it's not always easy for someone to visualize in 3 dimensions. So sometimes it's just a way to start to build a space rather than just looking at that flat plan all the time.
I just had an epiphany of you saying that, because for me, I can look at a floor plan. I'm a designer. I can envision what something will look like, but I will never get the full picture. I need to model it in Revit or SketchUp to really feel the space. Instead of doing that in a modeling program, which takes forever, I can just sketch that out in a perspective rendering really quickly and get that same, just if I were actually good at it. But
Well, I think a lot of people still, they're not necessarily 3-dimensional people, even though they work in this industry every day. Mm-hmm. When I first came out of college, I remember anytime you go in for an employee review, one of the questions on the review form was how well you visualize in 3 dimensions.
Really?
It was an odd question, but it was always there, because not everyone had the ability to visualize a space in 3 dimensions. So it is a special thing, I guess, to think about something in more than just a flat plane. And I don't know, I guess when I visualize a space, it's always in 3 dimensions. I know other designers that work in elevation and plan, and that works for them. It doesn't work for me. I have to sit and sketch it out, and then I can do that 3-dimensional, computer rendering.
Yeah. Do you use sketching more for yourself to visualize 3 dimensions, like you were saying, or do you use them as like a presentation skill, like showing them to clients?
I've done it both. I've done both ways, but a lot of times it's just a tool to start to develop a concept. I'll work out that rough sketch. I may go to the library and start pulling out finishes, and you just start to build that design. I'll sit down and start sketching, and as I'm sketching, I will know every detail in that space. I've already figured it all out as I'm sketching it, exactly how I want the casework to detail. All of it is already in my head as I'm sketching it out. I can go to the library and start pulling stuff together, and that's how the whole thing starts to develop. I'll take that sketch, sit down with a client, pull out my messy pile of finishes, and we'll talk about the design. And we'll work it out together as almost like a working meeting over sketching, rather than having that final 3D rendering, which they may take one look at it and say, I don't like this. So it's a tool to use along the process with a client.
What do you feel like the difference in reaction of a client is, like those showing them the hand sketches versus showing them like a more digitized rendering?
I think it depends on the client a lot of times. I had one client, I keep a sketchbook all the time of how I'm working on a project. I may tape little things in there, little snippets or little things I've cut out of magazines or whatever. It's like a little scrapbook. And I was working on a project with a client one time, and he let me know that if the building caught on fire, he was going to save the sketchbook, but I was done. Because he just admired the sketchbook, and, we had all kind of worked on everything in there together. So
I've seen that sketchbook, and I would agree with him. Sorry, we love you, but the sketchbook. For anyone that is interested in improving their sketching skills or wants to start incorporating more hand sketching and drawing into their professional practice, what advice would you give to them?
The stigma that comes along with it is, I can't draw. And I think a lot of that is just a mental block that you have to get over. And there are things that you can do to kind of just learn to loosen up, because I'm extremely anal retentive, rigid person. So whenever I sketch, you have to learn to sort of separate yourself from that side of what you do, and understand that I'm not trying to pick the doorknobs right now. I'm just trying to figure out the massing of a space. And it can be sloppy, and it's okay. And it's hard to get over that hump sometimes. Sometimes you just have to let yourself spill it out and lay another piece of trace over it, clean it up a little bit more. And that's the way I work a lot of times. It's just I overlay and overlay and overlay until I get what I want. But that first sketch it's a dog's breakfast. It's a mess. So
I've never heard that turn of phrase before. No.
Oh, wow.
My dog eats very well. She's a princess, so her breakfast probably looks a little nicer.
Probably a flower on the tray.
Yeah. We garnish it for her. She's spoiled.
It's funny. I was telling somebody the other day, when I was in high school, I remember my art teacher taught us how to do contour sketching. And I couldn't understand what this was for or what I would ever use this for. But basically, a contour sketch is, you're timed. You may be given 15 seconds. You have to look at something, and in 15 seconds, sketch what you see without looking down at your paper. You have to put your pencil on the paper, and you can't lift the pencil up. You watch what you're looking at, and in 15 seconds, you have to scribble down what you see in front of you.
That was my least favorite exercise in art school.
I know.
Absolutely hated it.
They drove me nuts, but they teach you to sort of really loosen up, and they also teach you that you've got to get something down very quickly. So you're not sitting there trying to detail every little thing on it. You really loosen up and you just whip it out really quick. Mm-hmm. And I think it really helps you start to get into that flow where you can kind of let go of that rigid side of you.
More contour sketching. I'm putting this on my mental note because I need to do that. I'm like the most rigid perfectionist person. Like even when I'm sketching, I have a ruler next to me because I'm like, and I sit this close to the paper too.
But I think knocking yourself out of that mode once in a while and just letting yourself just do something sloppy. Nobody else has to see it. You can throw it away when nobody else is around. But exercises like that get you acclimated to actually sketching and loosen you up a little bit. I think another tip would just be, in your daily work, don't be afraid to just, move away from the computer, get out a roll of trace and do a little bit of sketching as part of what you do every day.
I think that is a great tip, because as someone who, if I am in a phase of the project like CDs, or if I'm test fitting a lot, I feel like I am not a designer. I feel like I'm more of a technical person, or I'm some other trade that is just sitting in front of her computer all the time. And so breaking away from that, like going maybe into the materials library with trace and a pen, really brings me back to, oh wait, like I am a creative. I'm not just like an AutoCADer.
That's true. That's true. And I think you have to do that once in a while. Otherwise, like you said, it can really take you down the road of just feeling like, you know, you're a drafter, you're not a designer anymore. Even details. I will sketch out details, freehanding details and things like that before I actually try to draw that detail on the computer. We've talked about this before, but the generational aspect of, you know, when I grew up, picking up a pencil and drawing a line was just a natural thing to do. Computers weren't a natural part of what I do every day. You know, they didn't exist until my last year of college. For the generations today, there isn't anyone in architecture coming out of school that hasn't grown up with a computer from the time they were a child all the way to their professional life. So for me, to draw a line in a computer, it's a lot more of a, you know, right brain thing. It's like input line, you know, it's not like picking up that pencil and just drawing that line. I think for the younger generation, drawing that line in a computer is much more intuitive than it was for me.
I feel like I am a little bit on the cusp of that generational switch. I think I'm definitely on the younger side because I learned Revit in college, which at the time Revit was out there, but it was more rare for people to have it. So when I was applying for jobs and I said I was really good at Revit, people were like, whoa, like we need to hire her because we need someone on this team that knows Revit. And now it's like, Revit's done. Like everyone needs to have it. If you don't know it, you're dumb. And there's like 3 million more rendering and modeling softwares out there. But also in college, we were taught hand drafting at first, like on the board with the big, I don't even know what you call it, that thing that slides up and down. And
parallel bar.
That's what it's called. It's really interesting.
Parallel bar, yeah.
We learned on the parallel bar, and we had a lot of hand sketching. So I think I do have that good balance, but into professional life, it's really hard to get away from your computer.
It is. I remember my last year of college when, you know, we got our first computer, and the computer in the architecture department in the lab. We're all sitting around this thing like we just invented fire. We're like, wow. You know, it's like, it was a tiny little Mac.
And it sounds like,
oh yeah. It had ugly, it was like green. All the printing was green. It was like.
So before we close, do you have anything else to say to our viewers about the power of sketching?
Well, I think it's important to remember that you are always going to be your own worst critic. You know, you're going to think, oh, I can't draw. But other people are going to look at it and they're going to see it totally differently because you're already going to have felt like you failed. You know, do it anyway. You know, sketch it, understand it, and know that your concept is there. And I think you'll be happy with what you come up with in the end. But don't be afraid to do it. You're going to be surprised with the results.
I love that. That was such a great ending line. I loved that so much. Well, Brad, thank you so much for taking the time to come here and talk. This is a topic that I really do love talking about because I do love sketching, but it's something that I would love to incorporate in my professional life. So thank you so much. I'm going to take all of your tips. And I hope you also gain some confidence and knowledge about sketching and you start incorporating sketching into your everyday professional life. And if you want to support our show, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, give this video a like, and follow us on Instagram. If you're interested in working with us or hearing more about what we do at KLSY, then head on over to our website at www.klsy.design. And there you can also sign up for our email newsletter. Until next video, see you then. Thanks for watching.